Hi there, Isha here, and welcome to this episode of The Higher Life, where I take concepts that are considered new age, spiritual, esoteric, and psychological, and show you how you can apply these practically to really empower your life. That is, to develop the mindset and inner toolkit or resourcefulness to go out and live your life fully in charge of yourself, able to relate to people in a really healthy way, and to make choices that really serve for your greatest happiness and fulfillment. This would be a truly empowered way to experience yourself in this world, and also a way to help our world transform for the better. And at the moment, this would seem like a skill set that we're all in dire need of. You only have to go out and look at the media, whether it's online, print, on radio, the books that are coming out in the stores, to understand that anxiety, this experience or sensation of fear or worry, is a really driving force in our collective reality at the moment. There seems to be more of it. So in this episode, I wanted to unpack what is anxiety, but really what is anxiety in the context of personal empowerment. And I must acknowledge that when I create these educational videos, I don't pre-plan them. It's usually a topic that has shown up that I feel requires a little exploration and unpacking and attention. So often I don't really know what I'm going to say about anxiety until I've watched the video afterwards. And that's really important because I'm kind of exploring this with you, and I'm not immune to the anxiety that I'm unpacking, even though I may have an awareness around what it is and what it's really helping us to develop in ourselves. I am still subject to the same sensations, experiences, and behaviors that are driven out of this fear mindset. So let's get to it. What is anxiety? Now, the first thing to say about anxiety is it is first and foremost a sensation, and that is really important. Because when we are unaware of the fact that anxiety really is just a sensation, we tend to quickly get attached to the stories that our mind creates about what this sensation is and where it came from and how we can alleviate ourselves from it. And that is so key, because if we really understand the source of the sensation of anxiety, we can actually redirect ourselves away from fueling these stories and the kind of actions that they ask us to take, which have us using our energy incorrectly. And that is such an important thing, because at the end of the day, what all this work is about is helping humans to understand how to use their energy correctly and how to avoid using it incorrectly. And it is the mind state that actually has us using our energy incorrectly. It's the things that our mind has us believing are true about ourselves, about the world, about what's going to happen next or not happen next, that have us using our energy in a way that may be unhelpful and not necessary, and therefore leading to these enormous burnout that we're also seeing in the collective. People are burning out, and they're usually burning out not physically, but emotionally. So, first and foremost, anxiety is a sensation. And this sensation comes from awareness. So what do I mean by that? I mean the capacity for us as human beings to be aware of certain things creates sensations in our body. Now, if you ask an animal, are you anxious? They may not be aware of the sensation of anxiety. However, we've all seen that animals do get anxious. Dogs, cats, whatsoever. And that feeling or that sensation arises in them, and they take actions that are instinctual, such as the fight, flight, or freeze phenomena. Because in our animal tendency, we have this natural capacity to use the sensation of anxiety to keep us alive. It's a survival tendency or technique, because what this sensation is telling us is we are not permanent, we are impermanent, and we are vulnerable to the conditions, the physical conditions of being on Earth, where there are predators, where there is weather, where our bodies or the bodies that we are born into have a certain fragility to them. And this fragility is a real thing. These conditions are real things. You can be harmed by weather, by other people. Your body can break down. True for animals and true for us. So this sensation that is derived from an awareness, whether it's conscious, as it is in human beings, or unconscious, as it can be in animals. It's a real thing. So it's useful. This sensation has been in our system from the very beginning because it helped us stay alive on the physical plane. And therefore, it's been an extremely useful part of the human experience and very, very prevalent. We are all patterned or have the capacity for this sensation of anxiety because we are all born from the same experience. We've all moved through, we have the residue of our forefathers that were in a set of conditions in which this anxiety kept them alive, or this sensation of our own impermanence, of our vulnerability. We could simply say that anxiety is a manifestation of fear, and the underlying energy pattern we would call fear. Now, in our coaching circles or in transformational life coaching, we often refer to anxiety as a fear, a specific type of fear, a fear of the future. So anxiety tends to show up when our client has been thinking, has a mind game going on about what might happen next, or what might happen or not happen in the future. And this creates a certain type of fear we call anxiety. Now, this is really important because anxiety is different to overwhelm, which is another sensation which is giving us information that we might not be in a good place. Overwhelm tends to be when there is too much going on, or we've taken on too much, or our expectations are too high, and we feel this worry, this dread, this sensation of everything is going to fall apart. And that is telling us a different thing that we need to step back, reduce down. So you can see how breaking up fear into different flavors of fear also helps us to identify what the source of it is, the belief pattern. So with anxiety though, we still come back to the same thing, that it is an awareness of our own impermanence. And this sets off a whole lot of storytelling about what that means. The fact that we are not permanent, that we have an end date. And therefore we fill our minds up with all these beliefs, whether they come from the outside world, whether we've inherited them from the generations past, about what this impermanence means in our life. Does it mean that we are inherently fragile and all we can do is defend ourselves? Does it mean that in order to feel okay, we need to fill our lives up with lots of successes? Does it mean that we need to retreat from any type of situation in which we may be more subject to vulnerability and more our impermanence is more dangerous? So you can see how the mind has taken hold of this sensation of our own impermanence and created a whole reality around it that we're currently living in. And this is really important because when you're in a collective where there are high levels of anxiety, you're in a collective in which impermanence has become a major barrier to happiness, a major barrier to a sense of inner peace and contentment, and a major energy waster. Because if you believe that your impermanence should be guiding your life, you start to use your energy either to fulfill all these expectations so that when your impermanence finally happens, you feel like you've achieved something, or you use energy to protect yourself from anything that might make this feeling of impermanence more intense. So our whole life becomes driven by either using impermanence as a catalyst for using our energy in a particular way to achieve usually, or using this sensation of anxiety and our impermanence as a way of holding myself back and trying to control my environment, which, as I said in last week's video, can be helpful when we're just talking about creating safety in your physical reality, but not helpful when you're trying to create emotional safety. And this is a really big one because anxiety, a natural sensation that we all experience because we are impermanent beings, has been a major player in a lot of people misusing their energy. Mainly A, to try and create more emotional safety in their world, or B, to overachieve or to overconsume or to overdo. Now, this emotional unsafety, vulnerability, is experienced as a sensation and therefore an emotion. Because when we have sensations, we tend to also have emotions. Where we often mistake anxiety as an emotion rather than a sensation, and it's kind of important to realize that it's not. Overwhelm, anxiety, fears, they're more sensations that the body experiences, and that sets off a story about what that sensation is asking from us or what we need to avoid. And there's a lot of research done on the fight, flight, freeze concept. But here's the thing, we cannot avoid the sensation of anxiety in our body. I know myself that being a very open person energetically, I'm constantly feeling anxiety that has nothing to do with my personal circumstances and everything to do with a natural anxiety that exists in the human system. Every human being will feel anxiety because being impermanent creates a sensation of anxiety, and that's a true state. In my physical form, I am impermanent, and therefore anxiety is something that will always be ever present. But I might call it something else. I might call it a sensation that reminds me of my impermanence, a sensation that helps me stay healthy, a sensation that reminds me I need to care for my physical body because it may not last the distance if I don't. So sensation of anxiety or of our impermanence can be really helpful. The fact that we call it anxiety, which is a fear-driven mind belief, makes us feel like there's something we need to worry about, because anxiety has this direct relationship to a mind pattern called worry. And worry is simply everything is not okay. But actually being impermanent is very okay because it's our natural state. We are impermanent in our physical bodies. We are not impermanent in our emotional bodies at all. Our emotions come and go. They are fleeting. There is no permanence or impermanence. They're permanent and impermanent at the same time. They exist and then they don't exist. So we know that. We know we can be angry and then it disappears. So you can't hold it or feel it like you can a physical body. So I guess it is impermanent, but we kind of believe that it's not. We think that an emotion isn't a permanent thing and we somehow have to fix it or solve it or avoid it. If we genuinely embrace the fact that our emotions are impermanent, then we wouldn't have any fear around them. We wouldn't be anxious. We wouldn't worry about them because we know they were leaving and that more would come. So you can see how we need to reframe anxiety, this sensation of our own impermanence, in different aspects of our lives. But how can we truly transcend it if you know that anxiety, a sensation of your own impermanence and an awareness that you will die, an awareness of your own vulnerability, is an ever-present part of our lives? How can we live with confidence, with clarity, with ease, with a certain amount of effortlessness? I mean, that's what we're all looking for. And the rise in our awareness of anxiety and the way it runs our lives is a natural indicator that we're ready to transcend it. You can only transcend something you're aware of. And in the generations past, people's actions and relational styles were completely driven by this sensation of anxiety, but they had no awareness around it. We call it triggered, or it was just the way people related to each other. So, there were natural behaviors that derive out of that, such as overachievement or conflict or violence. I mean, there's a whole range of them that are driven by the fact that we're impermanent. Now we start to have an awareness of this sensation, this pattern, and the way it operates, and we're looking for tools to transcend it. And one of the biggest things that we can do is understand that it is awareness itself that allows for us to actually know this sensation and to be aware that it's directly related to the fact that we will die, our impermanence, and that there is a future that we are aware of as moving towards us. So awareness itself is where the sensation arises from. Awareness itself is where the sensation gets enmeshed with beliefs, the mind, which creates stories, and it's in awareness itself then that the story then becomes an action. So the power is in our awareness. So if we can actually align more strongly with our true self, simply being the awareness that all of this arises out of, suddenly it doesn't have the same hold over you. Suddenly anxiety is simply a sensation that moves through the human system. We don't even have to think about it, and you absolutely don't have to do much about it. But what you do have to do is do the work to calm your physical system down if you are experiencing high levels of the sensation. You need to know how to breathe through it. You need to know how to disentangle your sense of self and your relationships from an anxiety-driven relational style or an anxiety-driven way of using your energy out in the world. And we are so susceptible to this. I know in my own life that having grown up in a time in history as a woman where I'm told that I can do everything, and that one role such as being a mother doesn't have the same merit as another role, being a CEO, for example, or being a successful coach, or doing something where other people recognize the value of it, really drives the way that I was using my energy for many, many years. Simply wanting to make sure that I fulfilled my duties as a mother because I grew up in a family environment where the parental attention was limited and it had negative impact, and I didn't want to recreate that with my own children. But on the other hand, also having these aspirations and this creative sense of wanting to be out in the world and to be recognized and to have another life. It is such a complex set of goals to try and hold at the same time, and this anxiety, this sensation, this fear of my impermanence, that I only have a certain amount of time to do all of that, creates this stress known as anxiety. It increases that sensation in my body because I'm actually paying attention to it and living my life out of it. So of course it's going to get stronger. If I step back and I'm suddenly awareness that all of this is happening inside of, I can kind of give it the oxygen that it needs, and it starts to settle down. And in that settling down, I start to get the clarity that I need and disentangle myself out of using my energy on daily activities that aren't really serving my highest potential or my happiness or fulfillment. And most of the time it's just about doing less, sleeping more, being less driven by some sort of belief in my impermanence, which has me wanting to achieve certain things or avoid certain things or create emotional safety. And the one thing is, you cannot create emotional safety with another human being or in a relationship by controlling the way that that relationship plays out. And we all know this with our direct, if you're a parent, you know it with your children. If you're in a marriage or an intimate relationship or family of origin, you can't control the people you love. You can't control their emotional experiences. You can only become fully accountable for your own emotional nature. And sometimes our emotional nature is that we feel melancholy naturally, or we need time out from other people because we naturally will take on board their stuff. It is our role as an individual to do the work, to actually be accountable for our emotional nature and to take the steps necessary to stay emotionally well. Then you are safe, because you're in charge of your own emotional nature. The minute you believe that somebody else needs to feel a certain way or treat you in a certain way from an emotional perspective, that is, they're not harming you physically, you have given your power away to another person and you are vulnerable, unsafe, but that was your choice. It's not what the other person is doing to you that makes you unsafe. It's the fact that you haven't developed the inner resilience and strength to actually hold your own emotions and know that they are yours to hold. Now, of course, people are insensitive. We all are human. So if you go around wanting everybody to treat you in a certain way from an emotional perspective, you're just going to have a roller coaster experience because you're asking too much of other people. If you relate to everybody, fully accountable for your own emotional nature, then you'll take the steps that you need to. If you're in a relationship with a family member who's hard work, you'll need to take more time out to balance that out. If you're in a relationship with someone you love, but they don't really show you the kind of insight, clarity, or compassion that you're looking for when you need it, ask someone else. This is where you start to get smart. Instead of expecting someone that you love and you care about and you're in a relationship with to be the person that can meet you at that level, if they can't, think about the ways that they do meet you and go and look elsewhere. Or develop that capacity through spiritual practice, which is what I'm learning to do. Good meditation, sometimes just being with your emotions, consulting or listening to teachings that are wise and insightful and heart-driven can really help settle your soul. And most of the time, emotional upset requires settling of the soul. So I really hope that today has offered you a new perspective on anxiety. If you really stop, consider it's a sensation. It's a sensation that we naturally feel because we're human and we live in a reality in which our physical self is impermanent. This sensation has helped us survive and stay safe as a physical being in impermanence, so it's useful, but it's very limited. The sensation is not something that you need to be concerned about, unless you really are in a flight, survival, freeze, in a danger situation where you need that primal survival instinct, but that will probably just occur naturally. So if you're experiencing high levels of anxiety at the moment, think about doing the work of personal transformation, because what you're really doing is transforming the way that you engage with things that are naturally part of the human experience, so that they no longer have you using your energy incorrectly and selling you stories that aren't true about your okayness or not okayness, or your relationship okayness or not okayness. It's okay to be okay, by the way. We don't need to be living some extraordinary life where we've got it all worked out. We just need to be able to manage our own experience of ourselves on this planet, and that will already achieve huge leaps and bounds for the collective. A truly empowered human can add massive value to the human system without actually doing anything. Just doing this inner work is enough. So if this sounds interesting to you, absolutely check out the process of personal transformation that we guide you through at the Higher Life Academy. So until next time, take care and love life.